I was interested in a lot of the discussion going on. I was particularly interested in listening to your exchange with Senator Haggerty, where you used the line that I've heard you use many times when he asked a question about what Congress ought to be doing. You said, and I think this is a direct quote, "We are not in the business of giving fiscal advice to Congress either way." And again, that's similar to what you've said many times. Yesterday, thinking about this, I did a quick search engine review of the words "Fed chair urges Congress." And this won't surprise you. And by the way, there's not a person in this room that doesn't have some sympathy over headlines that aren't quite accurate, or even quotes. But one report in May of last year says the Fed chairman asked Congress to consider more stimulus. October of last year, Jerome Powell is putting out the call to Congress, more money now. November of last year, Powell still thinks U.S. needs more stimulus for full recovery. Even in December of last year, Fed Chair Treasury urged Congress to give U.S. a stimulus bridge. In other words, you haven't always resisted the temptation to give us fiscal advice. And by the way, thank you for it. I think it was good advice. Maybe we look back and say, well, maybe we did too much, but we were in a crisis. You did what you needed to do. We did what we needed to do, and I don't think there's a lot of regret about that. Now, a number of my colleagues have pointed to what's gone on lately and what's being suggested going forward. In addition to the $3.5 trillion package, it includes a lot of tax increases, like 7 times more increase than the cuts from 2017 that built the foundation for this quick recovery, I might add. You add in the $1.9 trillion totally unpaid for earlier this year, the $0.6 trillion in new spending as part of the $1.2 trillion bipartisan package that's being discussed. It's, you get to $6 trillion plus really, really fast. What people aren't talking about is if we end up at the end of this fiscal year passing a one-year CR or something similar to a one-year continuing resolution, we're going to spend another $6.845 trillion, $3 trillion of which will be deficit spending. Deficit spending. Now, my question to you is very direct, and that's just simply, does the economy need another $6 trillion plus another $6.8 trillion spent this year to enhance the recovery? And is there not a detrimental effect to all of that, including the tax increases, when we are, in fact, in a, call it whatever you want, type of an inflationary time, but it is uncertain, and there's concern, if not alarm?
If I can answer that by saying, we did a lot of things. I did a lot of things last year that we'd never done before, and that one in particular, I had a lot of encouragement from the administration and leadership on both sides of the Hill in both parties. But I swore it off, and I do think we should go back to regular order, which is that the Fed doesn't play a role in fiscal policies. It's not a national emergency like it was at the time, and I've been trying very hard so far this year, succeeding in not getting involved in giving fiscal advice. So I'm just going to have to, whatever you do, we take it into account in our policies, but we don't come out then and comment on whether we think this is a good idea or a bad idea. Sorry.
Well, okay, I appreciate that. Maybe just one other quick question. We've noticed that the Fed is continuing to pour some, or pumping some liquidity through the purchases, mortgage purchases, particularly, obviously, Fannie and Freddie. I mean, is that, do you see that as continuing to be necessary? Obviously you do, or you're doing it, but why?
So, as you know, we're looking at that right now. We're looking at, my colleagues and I on the Federal Open Market Committee are having a second meeting about that in a couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about the composition of our asset purchases and the path to beginning to reduce them. And I wouldn't want to judge that, but this is something that's very much on the table.
I might just add real quickly, with regard to climate risk that you've heard a lot about today, whether it's political or true risk, I would just want to remind my colleagues that when we assess climate risk in terms of the U.S. economy or U.S. investment, do not forget that every time we don't invest in energy or climate manufacturing issues in the United States, another country that doesn't do it as well as us is going to do it as well. And this is a climate change is a global issue, so let's think about risk in a global context. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cramer.